She and her husband are just ordinary folks. She worked in the county clerk's office. Her husband's a police officer. But their little 5-year-old boy, Ryan, for the last year, had talked about a past life in Hollywood. And he would cry and beg his mother to take him into Hollywood. And this was quite hard for her to endure. It's hard to, as a parent, to see your child suffering, and he was suffering on a daily basis. So she had heard that if kids can kind of process some of this, that see more of the past life stuff, that it can help them deal with it. So she went to the public library and checked out some books on Hollywood. And they were looking through one of them one day when Ryan pointed to a picture. There's this picture from an old movie called Night After Night. It's actually the first movie that Mae West was in, but the picture just shows a group of men, and a couple of them sort of in the middle, everyone's focused on. And he pointed to one of those and said, "Hey, Mama, that's George. We did a picture together." And then he pointed to one of the men on the end and said, "Mama, that's me. I found me." Well, the first one he pointed to is George Raft, a young George Raft, who went on, well, you may not know for those of us of a certain age, but went on to be quite well known in his day. But the other one he pointed to that he said he had been was an extra with no license. So Ryan's mom wrote to me to see if I could help determine who this fellow was. So I went out and went to Oklahoma and met Ryan and his parents. And then afterwards, and well, let me just say, I think it was helpful for the family, certainly for Ryan's mother, that if nothing else, I was respectful of what they were going through, that, I traveled halfway across the country to take seriously what they were experiencing. So afterwards, as we were trying to figure out who this fellow was, Ryan's mom was emailing me sometimes on a daily basis with all of these statements that Ryan was making about past life, which of course we could then log. And eventually, with the help of a Hollywood archivist and a TV film crew, is sort of a long story, but with the help of an archivist, we were able to find out who this was. The archivist, she went to the library of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And I don't know, really good for such library, but got all the materials on this movie Night After Night, most of which was about the stars of the movie. But then there's one picture of this guy, and on the back of it, it identified him as this man, Marty Martin. Which meant that we could then compare what Ryan said to Marty's life. And it turned out that even though I really thought it was unlikely this extra had this dramatic life that Ryan was describing, Marty Martin did. So Ryan talked about dancing on stage in New York, and Marty get danced on Broadway. And he said he went to Hollywood to work in the movies, which Marty Martin did, mostly working on dance in the movies. Said that he had been worked for an agency where people changed their names, and Marty Martin started a successful talent agency. Said he had this big house with a swimming pool, and that the street name had either the word rock or mount in it. And Marty Martin lived on North Roxbury. Talked about sailing on ships and seeing Paris, which Marty Martin did with his wife. And Ryan also said that one day he said he didn't know why God would let you be 61 and then make you come back again as a baby. And Marty Martin's death certificate, he died in 1964. His death certificate said that he was only 59, but his daughter and his stepson both said, in fact, it was 61. So I looked into it and found a passenger list, 3 census records, and 2 marriage listings that all gave ages that meant, in fact, Marty Martin was 61 when he died. So Ryan was right about that, even though the death certificate said 59. So altogether, we were able to verify that over 50 of Ryan's statements matched with Marty Martin's life. A few were off, and then many more were unverifiable. I mean, there were little details about daily life, which, that long ago we weren't able to verify, but 55 of them we were. And at the time, there was nothing on Marty Martin on the internet. Um, Eventually, now people have actually filled in some of the information after this case got some publicity, but there's no way that Ryan and his family found out anything about Marty Martin through some sort of surreptitious name.
Let's say Marty Martin's case, he comes out, Ryan comes out in his kindergarten years as potentially the reincarnated father to this daughter, or his uncle to his niece. They're still around, and Ryan's now a teenager and really doesn't remember much. And you even wrote that usually after the age of 6 or 7, they completely forget and they go on to live normal lives. But does that place any kind of pressure, I'm wondering, on these, either the kids or the family, just kind of thinking? Because I mean, if you hear that level of detail about your family, that all mostly accurate. I mean, you had like 50 something markers for Ryan's case that kind of matched up. It's hard to deny something like that. I'm asking if it gives closure to the family, or if it puts pressure on the kid. I'm just wondering, what have you seen in relation, both sides, as the years pass? Do people just kind of move on, or what happens?
Well, it can really vary. And I mean, there are some times where the previous family doesn't believe it, but often they do. And they're, especially when the child is really young, they will want to have a relationship with the child's family. And sometimes they do. So they'll be, I'm thinking more in age here, but they'll have various trips back and forth. Sometimes even after the child has moved on, it doesn't particularly care to see the previous family anymore, but they're still wanting that connection because, they feel a connection to their loved one who died. I think, like in Ryan's case where for the TV series, as a 16-year-old, or I guess he was 15 when they filmed it, but as a 15-year-old, meeting with Marty Martin's daughter, and like I say, his niece, I mean, it's too late. So, it can be, I think, kind of frustrating for the previous family in that case, that they really want to feel this connection connection to their lost loved one. But the kid's not in that place anymore. So it can be unsatisfying to them.
Yeah, another example of that connection and going back and forth is you talked about Kendra and Ginger. Can you recount that story? Because I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that was one where it's unusual in our cases that the girl, well, when she met this coach, she felt an immediate attachment to it, and was much more friendly and loving with her than she was particularly with strangers. And started to say that she had been in Ginger's tummy and had gone through an abortion. And eventually it turned out that Coach did confirm to her mom that, in fact, she had an abortion. But the attachment became incredibly intense, both for the coach and for the child, where the child is then spending a couple of nights a week at the coach's house. And, I mean, I understand certainly that the wish to maintain that connection is not necessarily what the child needs in their development in this life. And eventually the girl's family had a falling out with the coach and severed contact, which I think is probably best for the child. So, sort of like what I say to parents in general. I mean, certainly be open to what the child is saying, be respectful. But you don't want to get overly focused on the past life because you don't want it to interfere the experience of this life. And sometimes, people can't. I mean, it is really interesting and meaningful, but sometimes I think people get a little too focused on it and need to let the child just be a child and enjoy their life.
Is there anything, if you're a parent listening to this and you suspect that your child may be displaying some sort of past life memory, is there anything that they should do or shouldn't do to create a safe space for that? Or is there like a few questions that they should ask to verify whether or not this is actually what this is?
Yeah, and we've got a short column of advice for parents on our website. But yeah, as far as what they should do, well, one thing we encourage people to write down the child statements. Yeah, so that's setting a written record for us in case it can be verified. But most of the children recall a death by some sort of unnatural means, murder, suicide, combat, accident, that sort of thing. And yeah, those memories can be troubling to the child. So if the parent can be respectful of that and say, I understand that you remember that, but now you're safe here with us, and really try to emphasize that the past is the past and that, things are different this time around. That can be helpful. I mean, and particularly in the Asian cases, often the children have gone to the previous place, seen the previous family, and then you might think the intensity of the memories would grow, but it actually tends to lessen. I think partly because their memories are validated. They don't have to keep struggling to convince people because there it is. They see it themselves, but they also see that life is going on, moved on, and families are growing older and have their own lives. So in the same way with parents in general, just emphasizing that those memories are behind them, and this time they're all going to be families going to be safe together and have life this time. We don't encourage people to ask a lot of pointed questions. I mean, it's awfully tempting to try to find out what the name is, but the concern about asking a lot of pointed questions, one, it may upset the child, but two, they may start just making up answers. And it's better for the most part if you kind of come spontaneously. But when the child is in that zone of wanting to talk about these things, certainly asking open-ended questions. Or what else do you remember? Or that must have been hard, or whatever. Letting the child talk, and again, asking if they remember what their name is or where they lived or whatever. I mean, that's very helpful for us. Yeah, if it's accurate.
If you like that video, you're gonna love the next one. Click this thumbnail right here, and I'll see you over there.